Hello, everybody, and welcome you to our podcast, our newest episode of Listen to Your Head. Today, my guest will be Professor Theodore Sebastian Boone, US lawyer and AI expert, a member of the faculty at the Department of Business Law of Corvinus University of Budapest, and of counsel at the international law firm Dentons. As Dentons.com highlights it, in the course of his practice, Professor Boone draws on his extensive commercial and legal experience arising from previous leadership positions in the US and Europe at premier international law firms and one of the Big Four, and as former president and chair of the Board of Governors of the American Chamber of Commerce in Hungary. Professor Boone is listed on the recommended roll of arbitrators of the arbitration court attached to the Hungarian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Furthermore, he's also a former adjunct professor at Georgetown University's School of Law in Washington, D.C. Hello and welcome to you, Professor Boone. We are really happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be here, and I'm honored that your prestigious organization has invited me for this conversation. But since we're talking about AI, I need to say one thing at the outside. It's actually a question for your viewers and listeners. Is this really me here today, or is this a deep fake? So it's a key question. I can assure the viewers and the listeners that it's really me and not a deep fake. Of course, that's exactly what a deep fake might say, so you never know. But again, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, we're also happy to see it. If we are already speaking to the viewers, I would also like to tell you all to subscribe and like our videos, maybe share them. We are really happy to have all of you here and make some more entertaining content for you all. All right, I think I will just start. Also, one important thing that I have forgotten to say is before we had this whole podcast on Spotify, but now we are trying to renew ourselves and are moving to a new platform, YouTube, because we want to also utilize the power of video during our podcasts. All right, I think we can start with the most important question. What is AI, and what is an AI from the legal point of view, and how is it relevant on our lives today?
Well, it's an excellent question. Thank you. And it's a simple question in many ways. And like many of the most simple questions, it's actually one of the most difficult. I'll give you an example. When you think to yourself, is Spotify or is Netflix AI or not? Well, according to the European Union, according to the OECD, Spotify and Netflix is AI, because AI, in effect, under the legal definition that is used by the EU, is a machine-based system that, based on certain inputs, is making predictions, recommendations, or even content. So you think about it, Spotify recommends songs to you, Netflix recommends films, therefore that would be AI. But of course, advances to many more complex systems, such as the so-called large language models and the ChatGPT that pierced the public consciousness a year or two ago.
Very good. This would have been my next question. How does the legal word differentiate between, Spotify and ChatGPT? Because, of course, from my normal human being point of view, these two are very much different in many, many cases. So is there a difference between these two from a legal standpoint, or is it still under work to work this out?
It's a great question. What the EU has attempted to do with that broad definition of AI that I mentioned is to have the new EU AI Act, which recently came into force, cover all of that, but then divide uses of AI into different categories. Low-risk usage of AI, which would mean like Spotify or Netflix. There's not a huge danger. If Spotify recommends a bad song to you or a bad movie, you're not really at a lot of, dangerous risk. and then prohibited AI, which the EU has decided should not be allowed at all under certain circumstances, such as emotion reading AI other than is prohibited in the workplace and in schools, for example. And then the middle basket, which will be the one that is most interesting and most difficult in a way to decide what goes in there, is so-called high-risk AI uses that are AI systems that can be used but are perceived to be high risk, such as using them in job applications, deciding who gets a job, who gets promoted, education, who gets admitted to a university, justice. And in those systems, they can be used, but they're subject to a lot of oversight, a lot of reporting that needs to be done by the systems that are using them.
So if I understand correctly, then the three different costs, that's not the perfect word, but I will just use that, one is, well, unharmful AI, basically, Spotify, Netflix, and stuff like that. And then we have prohibited, which is completely prohibited in everything, or just commercial use, or...
Everything except under certain regulations. The military is carved out, but other than that, it would be everything. And may I get one related point
of course,
before you go on, because you brought up this point of everything. One of the most fascinating things about the EU AI Act is its so-called extraterritorial effect, meaning anybody, anywhere in the world, sitting in New Zealand or wherever, if you are placing an AI system on the market for use within the EU, then you need to abide by the EU AI Act.
I see. Really interesting. And how does this differ to, for example, the US, which could be one other big Western part of the Western world? Do they have some kind of regulation on AI?
Yeah, great question. The U.S. has been working on matters related to AI for quite a while. The White House issued a so-called executive order almost exactly a year ago on artificial intelligence. Now, this executive order is not as detailed, not as broad as the EU AI Act. Its primary function was to get the U.S. government agencies going on developing guidance and rules with respect to AI. However, it did have some specific requirements as well. For example, companies either developing or simply intending to develop an AI system that could have so-called dual use, meaning private sector, non-military use, but potentially military or national security related use as well, must report to the government on those activities. And that's one of the areas where it had a direct impact. Also, even though many of the regulations to be developed by the U.S. government will officially apply only to government entities, there are many, many companies that do business with the U.S. government, right? They supply the U.S. government. They provide services to the U.S. government. Those entities will probably have to comply with these same requirements.
I see. And this will be much more of an opinion question.
Sure.
How do you feel? Was the U.S. response or the EU response more well made and better in the current situation? How do you feel? Isn't the EU response too restrictive, or is the U.S. response maybe just too open?
Right. Excellent question. To look back a bit on how these matters are being approached, and maybe sometimes giving myself a little reassurance, I think back to way back in the 1970s when a futurist named Alvin Toffler wrote a book called Future Shock. And the premise of his book was that technology was coming at us so quickly and in a more speedy accelerating way that people were living in a state of shattering stress and disorientation. Now, I don't know about you, but that's sometimes how I feel every day, shattering stress and disorientation. But he called this status future shock. So the idea that technology is coming at us quickly and perhaps we need to react to it is not something that is new. And the EU has been taking a more specific legislative approach. There's no question about that. The U.S. taking a somewhat more laissez-faire approach. When you think about it, many of the largest, most significant players in the technology space are based in the U.S., in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, in Texas, in many locations. So my view would be, and thank you for requesting my opinion to a very difficult question, is that the technology should be, in a broad sense, kind of free to run, because that's what drives people to invent. Some people do it for the beauty of invention, for bettering all of us. Other people do it for the money, which can be fine as well. So I think there should be broad range with some guardrails on the sides, right? Some things that clearly should be prohibited. So, for example, for me, what the EU AI has done is this prohibition on emotion reading AI in the workplace and the schools. That makes a lot of sense to me. Would you, as an esteemed student at Corvinus, want it if there were emotion reading sensors in your classroom, sensing whether you were bored or interested? So I think there's some pluses on that.
Oh, yes, I also think quite similarly. I mean, of course, it is really interesting to hear the opinion of you, since, you live in two worlds. You are from the US, but right now living in the EU, and I had not the luck yet to even visit the US. But
hopefully soon.
Hopefully very soon. And as a person who can view both sides of the coin with greater understanding than I have, how do you feel? Does it have a great impact on difference of the common people's life? These regulations, for example, are there many AIs that I can access in the US that I cannot in the EU, or is it not something that the common people can really feel, and it's just basically for firms and bigger entities?
The AI itself is certainly having a big impact. There's no question about that. Now, there may be people that don't realize the impact that it's having on them, but it's still having that impact on them, particularly if you use this broad definition of AI that's used by the EU. Google Maps is certainly an AI application. It's making a recommendation to you as to which way you could go, and on and on. So it's certainly having an impact. Probably less people, at least pre-ChatGPT, were thinking about it and awareing it, but because that interface was so user-friendly, I think that's what really pierced people's consciousness. And I think there is, among the people that think about these things, a concern, a calm and reasonable concern, that we need to keep an eye on these things to make sure these systems are not abused in a way that could hurt people or hurt society.
If we are talking about abusing people in society, I will also ask another question, a little bit of an outstander.
Sure.
I would like to ask you about AI art. First of all, from the legal point of view, but if you want, you can also tell us your own opinion.
Sure.
If you are confident enough, not confident, it's not the right word that I'm looking for. The right word is if you feel like also telling as the viewers this question. What do you think, and what does the legal word think about AI art? Is it theft? Is it infringement, copyright infringement of training AI on different artists' art and then presenting it as, well, not yours, but as the AI's?
Very, very good question. When you think about what is the purpose of copyright, the purpose of copyright is to protect the intellectual property that springs from someone's brain or their talents that is new, whether that be music or painting. There are many different forms of copyright or trademarks as well, and that should have a value. Whoever thinks about that should be able to, if they want to, profit from it, right? And license it out or not license it out, and those kinds of things. So to me, when you have a product, whether it's a painting or a poem or anything, where protected intellectual property has been used as part of the database to generate the output, then I think the holders of that intellectual property should be protected and should be rewarded in the process. That's great to say in concept. How you would implement that is anybody's guess. But I think that should be the case. And then you ask the question, well, is the AI system going to hold, if they make something new, are they going to hold the copyright or the intellectual property? That's a related question. I think there, to me, the natural route to go is the developer of the AI system would be the party that would hold the intellectual property right that is generated, that is truly new, right? Because, it's not the guitar that holds the copyright to the new song. The guitar is the instrument that you use to help develop the new song.
I see. Thank you very much. I see I'm not even needed here. I mean, you can answer your own questions very good. Mm-hmm. I'm just...
I appreciate your questions very much.
Yes, also, just one little question related to that. Is there any kind of legal processes already related to that? Have you new laws written in the EU on that, or maybe in the US?
I think in both cases, it's still in the early stages of development. I think people are recognizing the problem, but the answers to those problems are still up in the air. If I may, for a moment, come back to the division in the EU between the low-risk, prohibited, and high-risk AI. So it's an attempt to divide the use of these systems into sort of good and bad, right? Can be used and can't be bad. And since we're here in Hungary, I'd like to refer back to the mathematical hypergenius János von Neumann, or once he moved to the U.S. and was at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, he liked to be called Johnny von Neumann. Hi, I'm Johnny. And János von Neumann, in 1955, wrote an article called Can We Survive Technology? Can we survive technology? Now, he wrote this article during the depth of the Cold War. So his focus on can we survive technology was mostly on nuclear power, nuclear energy, nuclear weapons. But if you read that article and think about it in terms of what's going on vis-a-vis AI, it's a very useful way to consider matters. And one of the things he wrote in that article vis-a-vis technology is the good and the bad uses of technology are so intertwined that it is almost impossible to separate them, to separate the good from the bad. Or as he referred to it, separate the lions from the lambs. But you could say, in a way, that's exactly what the EU is looking to try to do by creating these three baskets: low risk, high risk, and prohibited AI.
Very interesting. And also, you managed to basically snipe my finisher question, which is not coming yet because
my pleasure.
Even without our knowledge, we have already paraphrased it to "Can we survive AI?" But I will hold up with this question. Before that, I will also.
We can talk more about that too.
It's really interesting. So please, I will ask you to talk about it. But right now, first of all, I would like you to also ask, since we are a diplomacy, a student organization about diplomacy, what do you think? What kind of impact will AI have on diplomacy, particularly among the US and between US and EU, but also on the whole world?
Right. Well, great question. And there are many aspects of it. First of all, there's potential between nation states, or in fact non-nation state actors, to enter into sort of an AI arms race, right? Where people are developing different systems, particularly in the cybersecurity area, right? You can be developing AI systems that can be of use in attack mode in security systems, and then you develop AI systems that are in protection mode as well. So that's one area. Another area that I think personally would be very interesting is to use these systems to help the human professionals undertake analysis, make predictions, make recommendations in the diplomatic area with lots of different types of information being fed in. However, it is very important in the diplomatic field, as well as elsewhere where these systems might be used, is that it is understood that these recommendations are only recommendations, or that these predictions doesn't mean it's going to come true for sure. Because one of the concerns I have about can we survive AI, which we can continue on that a bit, is that even though something is officially an AI recommendation, that people will take it as, well, that's just the way it has to be, right? I have to admit, when Google Maps says go this way, I usually go the way it says. I don't think it all out. I don't deeply question the system and how that decision was based. But we're going to need to have the ability and the confidence to question that. And it may be hard because people may think, who am I to question the great AI, the great recommendation with these systems? It has so much data. It has so much processing power. Who am I, just Ted Boone, to question the recommended route that I should drive my car to get there the fastest? So that's definitely a question we're going to have to continue to look at.
Well, if we would like to look at it, then we should look at it. First of all, I would like to turn back a little bit to the cybersecurity part. How do you feel this? Already, cybersecurity was a really important question before AI, but now with AI, we have infinitely new ways of attacking another country. So do you think that this will basically put our dear government-funded hackers out of commission? Will AI put these people out of commission? And will we have a new age of basically AI on AI, cyber wars? Or will there still be a part of the world? Will there still be a part where there will be basically an AI-human cooperation during this?
Well, it's not going to put anybody out of commission for sure. One issue is, does the human stay in the loop on things or not? So you can see that particularly in military applications, right? A drone with an armed missile. Is the human going to be in the loop on the targeting of that drone, right? That's a very, very serious issue. And if you have an AI system where the human is not in the loop, that has the ability to act much, much quicker, that is perhaps being used by an adversary, even if you feel the human should be in the loop, what are you going to do when the other system can move much, much more quickly? So my hope is that the humans will not be taken out of the loop in this process, because the ethical use of these systems is absolutely mission critical to the whole process.
I see. So you say that at least you hope that I will have a job in the future. So
yes, let's hope that for all of us.
Yes. Let's hope that's for all of us. About the communities of the world, we already have talked about, nations and states. We already have talked about humans on a personal level. But how about the communities? How will it influence communities?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. And in that context, something that I think is very interesting to think about is how these systems make recommendations or potential decisions. Quite a few years ago now, DeepMind of Google developed a system called AlphaGo and then AlphaGo Zero, which played the game Go. And for those of your listeners that are not familiar with Go, it's a Chinese game which essentially is played on a 19 by 19 graph-like grid You place the stones on the X's, and you are trying to surround the other person's stones while they're trying to surround yours. So the rules are very simple, but the game and the possible permutations are incredibly complex. It's acknowledged, for example, much more complex than chess. So to give you an analogy, if you took every atom in the universe, and each of those atoms was itself a universe, and you counted up all those atoms of all those different universes, that's the number of possibilities there are in a Go game. Well, the system AlphaGo Zero played the Go champion, Korean Lee Seol, and the system won 4-1. And in game 2, in move 37, the Go AI system made a move that the experts said they would not have thought about in a million years. Unprecedented. They used the word creative. But nobody could describe the decision-making process which the system undertook to come to that brilliant move at the end of the day. So you look at that in terms of every people's lives, a recommendation comes out of a system, but how they got to that recommendation and how you trace back from D to C to B to A, that can be missing when these systems, they teach themselves, the so-called machine learning. Prior to that, in chess, simply the rules of chess were given to a system, and it played against itself millions of times. And within 3 days, it was at championship level. But nobody could explain, well, how did it teach itself? What did it learn? How did it make the moves that it makes? So that's a fundamental issue for us. In terms of other aspects of the impact of society, the infrastructure for AI uses a lot of energy, the services, the clouds, operations. There are estimates in the U.S. by 2026, use of AI will require about 6% of all of the U.S. energy resources. 6% of all energy use will be arising from AI systems. So that's a big energy use. And then the question is that going to be carbon or non-carbon based energy? And in some geographies, for example, in Finland, 97% of the energy use used for AI systems is non-carbon based, whereas in Asia, it averages between 8 and 20%. Also, these systems require a ton of water to cool. There are estimates when you have a little back and forth with ChatGPT that uses about 1 liter of water to cool the systems. So you have issues there. But one of the interesting facts is these same systems that are requiring all this energy use, requiring all this water, can be used to potentially solve these same problems through allocation of water resources, allocation of energy use, looking for other ways to conserve. On balance, first of all, this isn't going to be stopped, so we have to find a way to work with it, mold with it, again, have the guardrails. And on balance, I certainly believe it's going to create many more pluses than it is risks, as long as on the risk side we manage those risks.
So basically, you would say that right now, yes, because danger isn't turning us into the film Matrix and using us as batteries, but instead it has a danger of worsening pollution around the world and worsening our lives, but also it has the great chance to solve it. How can people work with this duality of the AI of being one of the greatest dangers for the world, but also while it's being one of the greatest possibilities of our lives to improve? So how do you feel, as you have said, you are believing in guardrails around technology, but do you feel, can we put guardrails around AI? Is there a possibility for us stopping it? Is there a possibility for us to not let it just get out of our reach?
Yeah, there's certainly the possibility to put guardrails there. Now, people may violate the guardrails, but I'm a firm believer in the goodness of most human nature that won't happen. But you think back, in ancient Greece, there was an oracle, the Oracle of Delphi, one of the most powerful women in ancient Greece. Now, people would go to the Oracle of Delphi and ask her a question. whatever she said was taken as the absolute truth, as the oracle. One of the concerns that I have is when these recommendations come out from these systems, even if officially the human can oversight, even if it's legally required that the human provide that oversight, will they really be willing to question that systems? That's definitely a major area. Looking at the parallels to nuclear energy, nuclear weapons, nuclear war in the Cold War, you can maybe look at that as for some rough guidance how to proceed. I myself am still thinking it through, but there's this International Atomic Energy Agency that is designed to have international cooperation on the peaceful use of nuclear energy. Very recently, within the last couple months, the Council of Europe issued a treaty on AI, on the proper use of AI, which is now open for signature. So countries can sign that, pledging to use AI and to have laws in place relating to the use of AI that foster the proper and the ethical use of AI. The Vatican is deeply into AI. They have an AI call for ethics, which IBM has signed, and other major entities have signed. And so to approach this, look, we got to look at these things from an ethical point of view, and then maybe as a fallback have some legal regulations as well. But we can't, and I hope we don't stifle the growth of these systems. They have so many potential benefits. Pharmaceutical drugs, healthcare, X-ray analysis. There are miracles waiting to happen for us.
Thank you very much. I think we will sadly have to end on this really positive note. We have run out of time, and also I would like to thank our viewers for their time, because mostly I would like to thank you, Professor Boone, because it was an incredible knowledge that you have given us today and right now. I hope we will have a chance to maybe do a second episode of it, because I felt this was really interesting. Also, I would like to ask all of our viewers to please look us also up on other social media. We have Instagram, we have Facebook, we also have a TikTok. So we are also waiting for you there. We have very interesting topics to cover and news which you can access there. Thank you again, thank you once more for that you have accepted our invitation today.
It's been delightful and a true pleasure, and I was very happy to be here, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you very much. This was Listen to Your Head. Have a nice day, you all.